Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say first off that they are one of the most respected names when it comes to Japanese craft beer, and they are very solid all round actually. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have had from them before. It's also from a series of beers that we've had one of on the channel, if I remember correctly, back in about 2019. But these beers are very unique in Japan. I don't think there's many people brewing these sorts of things at all. So yeah, this one also has a little bit of a Japanese twist to it that I've never had in a beer, so I'm very curious to see how that turns out. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up to Nagano Prefecture once again in the Tohoku region in the northern part of Honshu, the largest of the Japanese main islands. We're going to go to Yamanouchi city to be specific, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Tamamura Honten and their Shiga Kogen beer range. So this particular beer comes from the barrel-aged Yama Bushi series. This one is the Ume. It comes in at 7% ABV. This one is a brown barrel-aged sour, and it's aged a little bit with Japanese Ume green plums. So yeah, this should be really very, very interesting. The last beer I think that we had from these guys in this series was that was like a Flanders Red, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, this one is a little bit different, and I think these guys are the only brewery in Japan that are experimenting with these kind of Belgian style, old school, woody type sour beers. So yeah, this should be very interesting. I've never tried Japanese plums, Japanese Ume plums in beer before, so again, I think this should make for a very quirky and interesting beer actually. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's all about. Definitely cool to have a sort of old school Belgian type sour from Japan here on the channel once again. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links will be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Tamamura Honten and their Shiga Kogen beer range before, and we will no doubt add more to that list the next time I'm in Japan. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. The geography tagging system's there, but just go into the homepage, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with many other things, and you can of course check out the playlist of beers from different countries there as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit more about Tamamura Honten and their Shiga Kogen beer range. So, as I've told you before, Tamamura Honten are an old company based in Yamanouchi in Nagano Prefecture in Japan, a few hundred kilometers to the northwest of Tokyo, and this area is particularly well known for its ski slopes and for its hot springs. But the Tamamura Honten company began brewing sake back in 1805, and they recently began brewing beer under the Shiga Kogen beer name, which is in English Shiga Heights beer, Shiga Mountain beer, something like this. But they started this brand in 1998, and they also produce a little bit of wine as well, from what I understand. But the head brewer at Shiga Kogen Beer is Sato Eigo, who joined the company in 2003, and the idea to start brewing beer came when the number of skiers to the resort began to dwindle, and so in May of 2004 they applied for their brewing licence and they received it about 4 months later. But they bought their brewing equipment and trained for a week at a brewery down in Kyushu before beginning their own commercial activities, and at this point they only had a consultant to help them out, but needless to say it has gone pretty damn well for them. But Tamamura Honten produced their own hops, sake rice, barley, buckwheat and blueberries, many other things as well from what I understand, and they actually developed their own hop variety called Shinsu Waze, which is It's a kind of crossbreed of Czech Sats and a local variety, and they originally used it as a bittering hop for lagers, but they now use it as an aroma hop as well. I haven't actually seen, I don't know if they use it in all their beers a little bit these days, but I haven't actually seen a single hop beer with this, so that would be a really interesting release from these guys going forward. I think I would love to have a little look at this hop and see what it's actually like, because the only other one Japanese hop that I'm aware of is the Soriachi Ace, so to try Shinsuwazi would be quite an interesting one. But these days the brewery also have two tasting rooms that they call Tepper rooms, one of which is at the brewery and the other one which is at the Shiga Kogen Ichinose Hotel's Chalet Shiga. But the bottle art on this one is designed by Tanaka Noriyuki, and as of April 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 115 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. But yeah, as I say, I've had many beers from these guys over the years. One of the ones that I really would recommend that you try, though, one of their kind of more regular ones that always comes about, is the Sonoju, which was the brewery's 10th anniversary IPA. Very, very nice beer, really solid, old school West Coast IPA. But yeah, that is everything I think we need to say about Shiga Kogen beer and the Tamamura Honten company for the moment. I do hope I can review one of their sakes at some point in the future. We'll need to get up there to Nagano Prefecture and see what it's all about. But yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I've got some details about how they've actually made this beer. Like I said to you already, this one is a 7% brown sour ale. It was brewed originally back in April of 2019. It's been aged for 23 months in Ichiro's malt whisky barrels and then re-fermented for 10 months with locally harvested Ume Japanese green plums before being bottled in May of 2022, and they've allowed it to rest for 8 months before they released it in January of this year, 2023. But the beer only reached beer shops here in Osaka a couple of weeks ago, actually, so this is a very, very recent release for many people. I obviously could have kept this beer and aged it a little bit, but I kind of, you know, they were saying on the brewery website that they've tasted it quite a lot and they think it tastes good now. So yeah, I just wanted to try this and see what it's all about. It's not often, as I say, that you come across like an old school Belgian barrel type sour beer like this here in Japan. So yeah, like I said earlier, this one is the Ume, 7% from the barrel-aged Yama Bushi series from Shiga Kogen beer and Tamamura Honten. So that you know, and I didn't know this either, the Yama Bushi are Japanese mountain hermits, and they're associated with a religion called Shugendo, which has elements of Buddhism, Shinto, which are, you know, quite widely spread in Japan, but also a little bit of Taoism, which I don't think is too widely followed here in Japan, I guess we could say. But yeah, as you can see, lovely label on this one, and these labels are quite typical of the barrel-aged Yamabushi series. But yeah, the Ichiro malts, if you see the Ichiro malts whiskey labels, you'll see that they do have a kind of flower that's a little bit similar to this actually. But yeah, I believe on the side here it tells you a little bit about the beer, but I've kind of showed that to you, or said that to you a little minute ago anyway. But there you can see the Tamamura Honten company symbol there, the dragon behind the kind of round all. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I think this should be very, very interesting. Now, this beer was a little bit more expensive. It cost me, I believe, 2,000 Japanese yen. So that translates to roughly, what is that going to be? 2,000 Japanese yen will be somewhere in the region of like about 15 euros, 150 Swedish kroner. So about maybe £13 sterling. About $16 or $17 American, something like that. So yeah, it was a wee bit more expensive, but this is one of these times where I've just kind of said, you know, fuck it, why not? I wanted to kind of treat myself a little bit with this one, and it just caught my eye. They released 3 beers in this series at roughly the same time, and this is the one the guys at Craft Beer Based Mother Tree in Umeda here in Osaka recommended. The guy who was helping out in the shop, who I've seen him a few times when I've been in there, very nice dude. This is the one that he recommended I have a little look at because of the Japanese plums, and he said it was his favourite as well. So yeah, just wanted to have a go at one of these beers, I have to say. But yeah, this looks very, very nice, I have to say. So before the head disappears on this one, we can see that it's poured with about a half finger of a frothy, kind of fawn coloured head there. That just fades away. It's starting to fade away to be a nice kind of thin foamy layer now, but you've got a thicker ring just around the edge of the glass there. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass too. But in terms of the carbonation, there's not too much visible in this one. Colour-wise, this beer is really nice. I'm not sure how well the colour's going to show up for you. I think actually it looks as if it's showing up quite nicely. I'm just going to get rid of the light from the computer there because we finished with the brewery notes. But yeah, you can see that this one has a lovely sort of ruby-ish tint to it, lovely kind of mahogany type colour as well. But yeah, I think this one looks very nice. It looks a little bit like a kind of Flanders red or something like that. It reminds me of Rodenbach a little bit actually. So yeah, lovely kind of deep red ruby colour, but more of a, it does have a little bit of that kind of mahogany type thing to it as well. So yeah, needless to say, appearance wise it looks kind of as we were expecting. And remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of your beer as well. But when it comes to these kind of barrel type sour beers, that is going to play a role. Actually, you know, what fruits and things you use, and the barrel is going to play a role in that as well. But the malts, of course, do play a big thing as well. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the appearance of this beer. Let's have a wee look at the aroma and see what it's all about. Oh yeah, this smells very, very nice. It's been a long while actually since I've reviewed a beer that's in this kind of style category, now that I think about it. But yeah, as I say, I just couldn't resist this one. A wee bit more expensive, but you know, having tried this series before, I know that this won't let me down. So yeah, backbone of the beer for me is, it's kind of as you'd expect. You've got everything you would want from a beer like this. You get the kind of sharper, tanniny notes out of it. You get the nice, smooth, woody character underneath, and you've also just got a little bit of the kind of fruitiness, both from the kind of natural beer itself, but also from the addition of the Ume green plums. Yeah, this smells lovely. As I've said to you on the channel many times before, for me, a good sour beer is one that will give you a really lovely transition. You want this beer to have a little bit of impact sourness in my mind, but then you want it to mellow out and give you a lovely smoothness and sweetness later on. So yeah, the way the beer goes together from that perspective, I think is going to be quite good. As I say, we've had one from this series before, and I remember it being pretty damn nice. But yeah, let's just break this beer down and describe it in depth a little bit more. So yeah, you can smell the lovely oaky character in the backbone of this beer. I'm not sure where the Ichiro malt whiskey barrels use their oak from. I'm not sure if it's an American oak or exactly what it is, but you can smell the oak is really nice and very smooth, and it smells quite distinctive to me as well. You can actually smell a little bit of the whiskey in this particular beer as well. So you can smell that lovely smooth oaky character. It has a little bit of dryness like European oak, but it has a little bit more of a kind of sweet smoothness, which I would associate more with American oak, to be honest with you. And you can, as I say, smell a little bit of like a, it's almost like a slight kind of butterscotchy type thing, but it's got a little bit of that sweet, the sweeter side of the whiskey spirit too. So you can really smell that underneath this one. The woody character in this beer has a kind of inherent sweetness to it, which is not something you come across all that often. There's a little touch of vanilla mixing in with that, but I think, yeah, describing it as a smooth and sweet oak with a bit of European dryness and a little bit of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type character, I think that probably summarises what's going on with the wood in this one as well. It's almost got a little bit of like a toasted bread type quality to it as well, and that's just the woody character in this beer. So yeah, the beer itself, when you sugar the beer up, you can smell a little bit more of the actual beer itself, I would say. You get more of the woody character out of it when it settles. But yeah, when you look at the beer itself, it's interesting. The sour side of things, we'll talk about the sour side first, which we don't normally do, because your nose will saturate with the tannins and things the more you smell this beer. But the tannin-y character you get out of this one is, it really is quite nice and quite sharp in the beginning. And it's got an almost kind of like red vinous type quality to it. But I mean, ume plums, from what if I'm not mistaken, are used in these Japanese plum wines and shochus and things like that. So yeah, I'm kind of familiar with this aroma. But what you'll find with Japanese fruit is that it's very, in my experience, it's very oily and very kind of juicy compared to fruit from other countries. And you'll find that these kind of flavours, Japanese love like really oily but still quite juicy flavours. You'll find this when you drink Japanese sake, you'll find it in the mouthfeel, the craft beers, and you'll also find it with a number of the different kind of foods that you'll get over here as well. And the aroma of this one really kind of gives the impression that the fruity side of the beer is going to be like that. As I say, you get that sharper tannin that comes in, it just mellows out in the nose a little bit, and you get the kind of oily, juicy, ume, plummy characters out of these. They do have the kind of smoothness of blackcurrant, and it's almost a bit more like a kind of prune, I have to say, for me, from the European perspective. But yeah, these ume plums are very, very unique to Japan, actually. I don't think they travel much outside of the country at all in that regard. But yeah, you can smell as I say, my nose is kind of saturated with this one. It's got a good little bit of juiciness to it now. The sharper tannins have gone, and then yeah, you've got just that oily, plummy character there too. But from the bready, from the beery side of things itself, this beer, it does have a little bit, when you sugar the beer up, as I say, you get more of the kind of backbone of the beer. But yeah, there's a little bit of there is definitely a little bit of a kind of crusty, red crusty character coming out of this one. So yeah, you can smell like it's like a kind of fresh, wholemeal, brown bready character in there. You've got a little bit of you've got the bread crust, then you've got the sweeter aspect of the brown bread, and then you've got wee bits of brown sugar on top of that. It almost has just like a very slightly toasty, brown sugary character, but then you get like Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type things coming out of it. And yeah, so for me, it's quite, yeah, bread crust, brown bread, a little bit of toasty brown sugar, then a bit of a kind of Werther's Original sweeter sweeter note coming out of it. So yeah, the way that goes together in this beer, I think, is very, very nice, I have to say. Yeah, aroma-wise, the malty side of this beer is pretty good. On the hoppy side of things, I don't think there's too much to report. And remember, when it comes to the more old-school Belgian barrel-type sours, one of the tactics that's often employed with these beers is to use older hops that have lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency. And this is where the beta acids come into play. The beta acids determine how long the bitterness will last in a hop, whereas the alpha acids, they're basically how bitter are they. But yeah, for me, you can smell with this one, it does have a little bit of green component to it. There's a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of herbal note, and a wee bit of floral and grassiness there, but it's all quite smooth, and to me, that's probably an indicator an indicator that they are using like more older, using older hops in this beer. And the reason that they do this is so that the hoppy character from the beer doesn't detract from the actual sourness of it. But we have to remember that this beer it's taken them about 3.5 years to actually produce this thing. So a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one, actually, but I can still detect it a little bit on the nose, I think. On the fruity side of things, to round off, though, I think we've covered the hoppy side of the beer. On the fruity side of things, with this beer, you do get little hints of like blackcurrant underneath, little touch of figgy note, but obviously it is about the kind of sour plums, and I think that the plummy character, as I said, it's a mixture of like, for me it's kind of pruny, and it's also kind of like black curranty. Yeah, these are the sort of things that you're getting out of this beer for me on the fruity side. Yeah, there's a little bit of candied strawberry, a little bit of blackcurrant, a little bit of fig and stuff, but then yeah, you've got the nice distinctive Japanese ume plum. But for those of you who don't know, there's a little bit of a kind of pruny and black curranty type quality to it for me. So yeah, as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy these beers, the aroma of these beers, before you get stuck into them. But I think it is about time that we try this one. So yeah, this one is the Ume batch number 1. It says here on the side quite specifically it's batch number 1, so I'm guessing they've done another one of these a year later or something like that. But this is from the Barrel Aged Yama Bushi series from Shiga Kogen beer. This is the Ume, a 7% barrel sour that's been aged for 10 months in the, what was the name of the distillery's gone right on my head then, the Ichiro Malt, that's it, the Ichiro Malt distillery barrels for 23 months. Then it's been re-fermented for 10 months with Japanese ume plums, allowed to sit for 8 months in the bottle, and then it's been released. Let's get stuck into this one, and this will be absolutely lovely. Slange, skål, cheers, gambe. Oh yeah, that's a lovely, lovely beer, I have to say. Yeah. Yeah, this gives you pretty much everything that you would want from this kind of beer. For me, it's up there with what you would expect from the European breweries, from the actual Belgian breweries itself. And this is one of the great things about the Japanese beer scene. When you come across something that's as well refined as this, it really kind of shows you how much they've progressed over the years. Like, they are doing some really, really awesome stuff these days. And we tried these beers back in 2019, like I said, but this one is just really, really respectable, I have to say. Very, very well done beer, this one. And from what I remember of the original one, this one just seems a lot more refined. It's got a lovely smoothness to it. It gives you everything you would want from such a beer, actually. So a massive thumbs up to Shiga Kogen beer for this one. They really have kind of pulled this one out of the hat, actually. Yeah, let's just take this beer and kind of break it down and describe it as we often do. So yeah, middle third of your palate then. For me, the middle third of the palate has this lovely, smooth, oaky backbone to it. But like I said, the oaky character that you get in this beer, it's a little bit more, it's a little bit different, I would say. So yeah, you have this lovely kind of dryness to it, but as you come further forward on the palate, you can feel that it just smoothens out a little bit. So there's a little bit of the American oak smoothness for me, but also a little bit of the European oak kind of quality. So yeah, I have to say, I think this this goes together really interestingly from my perspective. I do really like the woody nature that this beer has. So as I say, it's got that lovely smoothing note to it. As you go further forward on the palate, within the woody character, you can feel there's a little touch of there is a little touch of a kind of Werther's, a little touch of a Werther's original kind of note, like Werther's original butter candy, butterscotch. But you also have a little bit of vanilla in there as well, which I have to admit I really quite like. Yeah. And on top of that, you get a little bit of the whiskey spirit. And whenever I've tried an Ichiro malt whiskey, they've always been, you know, kind of smooth and kind of oily and leaning more toward the sweet side of things. And you definitely can detect that a little bit in this beer. And you know, we're only talking about the woody character in this one so far. And it is really, really very nice. So that's the one thing I love about the Japanese whiskies, is they always tend to be a little bit smoother and a little bit sweeter. And I think it's just because of the climate, or you know, the Japanese palate is kind of like that. They like oily and sweet things. Just in my experience, I would say that's maybe a generalisation, right enough. But yeah, it's absolutely lovely. The woody character in this beer, and quite unique, I think, when it comes to these. Quite unique when it comes to this type of beer, you know, the kind of barrel sour. So yeah, lovely stuff, this one. Like I say, a massive thumbs up to Tamamura Honten and Shiga Kogen beer for this beautiful beer. Yeah. Oh, that is good. That really is very nice. I will say, like I said, I paid a little bit more for this one, 2,000 yen roughly. And Japanese craft beer is a little bit more expensive, as I've said to you in many videos. They have to import all the ingredients, the malt as well as the hops, which is one of the kind of more unique things to the Japanese beer scene. But I guess you can say the same about Korea as well. But yeah, certainly don't regret paying it for this one. This is beautiful. And sour beer you do expect to pay a little bit more for, in fairness. But yeah, on top of the kind of woody character that the beer has from the barrel, you can get some of the nice kind of bread crusty notes in there as well. So the bread crusty backbone that the beer itself has, just sits on top of the kind of sweeter side of the whiskey. So yeah, you can feel that lovely sweet kind of smooth whiskey sort of thing to it, and that you just feel the oily kind of spirit sitting on top of the wood. But then yeah, you've got a little bit of a kind of fresh, kind of wholemeal brown bready bread crust out of this one. Above that, you get a little bit more of a kind of sweet and smooth wholemeal brown bread. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, the bready character of this beer, it really is a sweet kind of wholemeal type brown bread. I will say that further forward on the in the bready layer of the beer, there is a very slight kind of nutty touch to this one. So yeah, I do like that. So yeah, a little bit of a slight kind of nutty touch in there, and yeah, it just kind of mellows out into the aftertaste as well. You get more and more of the kind of woody character pushing its way out of the beer the further into the aftertaste you go. But then I would say above the bready character in this one, there is like a bit of a leathery kind of brown sugar coming out of the beer. This beer has a lovely little bit of leathery character to it, and again that lingers into the aftertaste as well. And then above that you get a wee bit of that kind of sweet butterscotch, butter candy type thing out of the beer. Yeah. So for me, the malty side of this beer, I think, just is absolutely lovely. I could sit and just think over this all day. But yeah, it's the woody character we've described quite well. The breadiness, as I say, a little bit of a kind of sweeter wholemeal brown bread crust, a sweeter layer of brown bread, little touch of nutty element to it. Then above that, you've got this leathery kind of brown sugary layer, and in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's like a little circle there, and you get a bit of a kind of sweeter Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch, but also toffee-like type quality. So yeah, I think that describes the middle third of the palate quite well in this beer. Let's move on to the back third of the palate then. We'll go through the beer as we always do. So yeah, back third of the palate, you have this, on the back third of the palate, you can feel the border region between middle and back third of your palate. You do get a little bit of a kind of brown wholemeal bready build-up, and the layers are quite similar on the back third of your palate, but they just come out a wee bit differently. So yeah, you can feel in the woody layer, the woody character is that little bit drier. So yeah, a lovely little bit of kind of woody dryness in there. Then above that, you can feel a little bit of the spirit is there as well. You know, you can just feel these layers. The woodiness is slightly drier, and the spirit layer is just a little bit kind of taller, if you like, but it still has a wee bit more dryness and toastiness to it, I think. Then you have above that the kind of bread crusty notes, but they feel a little bit lighter and a bit more kind of airy. But then you have this really tall, light and airy kind of wholemeal brown bready character, and above everything else there, you've got a wee bit of a yeasty character. So for me, the yeasty character on the top of that back third of your palette, it has this kind of farmhousey, crackery, woody, bready note to it. Then you've got a wee touch of the kind of honeycomb note in there as well, a bit of a crackery honeycomb sort of thing. So yeah, the way this beer goes together in that sense is really, really nice. So yeah, definitely on the back third of the palette you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of the palette, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, let's have a wee look at the hoppy side of this beer then. So like I said to you earlier, this beer has taken them about 3.5 years to produce, so a lot of the hoppy character has dropped out of this one, but I do think there's a wee bit of residual flavour with this beer from the hoppy characters. So back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of earthiness in there, and as you move further forward, it's quite herbal, and that herbal character does move further and further forward along the herbal character does move further and further forward along the kind of front, the sides of your palate, and you reach the front corners of your tongue, and it's got a little bit more of a kind of floral, aromatic sort of thing to it. But yeah, around the front curve of the tongue, it's definitely got a wee bit of a lighter sort of grassiness to it. And I would say the grassy character has a little bit of wetness and a little bit of oiliness to it. But yeah, these flavours are kind of subdued compared to other parts of the beer. But yeah, definitely, I think the green component for me leans toward a kind of grassiness, but it has that wee bit of earthy character as well. So yeah, the way everything goes together in this beer, I think, is very, very nice. On the fruity side of things and the sour side of things, now we get started on the front third of your palate, which is also worth looking at. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, for me, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. It's a kind of smooth brown bready character, but the base of that front third of your palate has the lovely kind of smooth oaky woody character. Now you get a wee touch of the vanilla, and then you've got a bit of the spirit sitting in there too, the sweeter side of the spirit, but then a bit of a sweeter brown bread, and then you get the oily bubble where the fruits from the hops come out of it, but then you've also got the kind of sharper tanniny notes coming out of this beer as well. But what I would say about the tannins and stuff in this beer is that they are very smooth actually. I hope I'm actually getting that right, because tannins are usually associated with wine and things like this. But yeah, this beer definitely has a wee bit of that. But the sourness that you get out of this beer does have a little bit of impact to it, but then it really mellows out the more that you drink of this one. And generally speaking, this isn't like some of these American, the Pacific Northwest sours that you get. This one has a little bit of that in the beginning, but it has a little bit of the kind of smoother character to it. It's almost like a kind of plum Flanders red, this beer. I think that's a fair way to describe it, to be honest. It is, if you like Rodenbach, you probably are going to enjoy this one. I think that's definitely fair to say. But yeah, this beer, it gets sweeter and sweeter the more that you drink of it, but it's quite a smooth and a kind of dry sweetness that you get. But what you'll find is when you take this beer in, behind the front tip of the tongue, just behind the very front tip of your tongue there, you'll get a little bit of that kind of vinous-y sharpness from it, and it just mellows out a little bit, and just kind of it just gives you this lovely, lovely smoothness. Like I said, for me, a good sour beer is one that has a little bit of impact to it, but then just mellows out very nicely, and this beer certainly achieves that in my mind. So yeah, when you take this beer in, you'll get a little bit of that kind of, it's like a vinous-y, plummy, but also kind of raisiny sharpness there, and that comes in behind the tip of your tongue and just rolls out and mellows out, and then you start to get more of the woodiness and leatheriness and sweetness out of the beer, and some of the drier fruity characters as well. But yeah, the way that everything goes together in this beer is absolutely lovely. So let's just look at the fruity side of it. If you go to the back of that front third of your palate, you have a little bit of like a sort of sultana. You've got a little bit of a sultana and kind of peary type quality to this one. So yeah, dried sultanas, a little bit of a kind of peary sort of thing. Maybe a little touch of like a white grapey note to this one. as well, which is kind of interesting. But as you move further forward, you get more and more of you do get a bit more of this kind of ume plum flavour, and for me it's quite interesting. Like, it really is a mix. It comes across as it has a little bit of that kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry note to it, but it also has a little bit of a kind of pruny note, like a dried plummy character. But these plums are very kind of bright and smooth, I think, in terms of their quality. It is a very unique flavour. It's quite hard to describe it, but yeah, for me, like I say, the flavour that you get out of this one is out of the ume plums is a mix of, like, it's almost like if you crossed like gooseberry with a little bit of sultana, maybe. I think that's a good way to describe it. So yeah, like a gooseberry mashed up with a sort of sultana quality. You know, sultana's dry white green grapes. That's really how this beer comes across for me in its sour component. You do of course get little elements of like candied strawberry and stuff like that, but yeah, the way this beer goes together from that perspective, I think is very, very nice. So yeah, big thumbs up from me with this one. Yeah, just lovely, lovely beer. Like I say, you do in the beginning, you get a little bit of that vinous sharpness to it, and it just gradually mellows out, and you get more and more of the woodiness and the leatheriness pushing through, and the fruits. I would say the fruity character in this beer is quite dry, and it does spread a little bit around the kind of front edges of the tongue. Like, whenever you add fruit into beer as an adjunct, it always suppresses a little bit of the green component, and this beer, you can feel that with this beer. That's one of the reasons why they don't use fresh hops in these kind of barley sour beers, but this is lovely. This really is very nice. I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer. We can round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, the mouthfeel of this beer, I'd say it's right in the middle of the spectrum. It is mid-bodied, the carbonation is very smooth, it does feel very clean actually, this one, and this is something we have had from the Shiga Kogen beers as well. I'm not surprised, because Nagano and the Tohoku region, generally speaking, in the north of Honshu, lots of mountains there, very, very pure water. This beer does have a little bit of that kind of mountain cleanliness to it, absolutely. But like we said, the woody character in this beer has a lovely smoothness to it, but a wee bit of dryness. The bready character has a bit of smoothness and a bit of fluffiness, but yeah, you also have that little bit of kind of brown sugary sweetness, but it's quite a smooth and leathery brown sugary character. Like, basically the woody and malty part of this beer is absolutely lovely. This one doesn't have so much of an impact sourness to it, and it gives you that transition that you would want from a sour beer. It just mellows out really nicely. In terms of the IBUs, I think it's going to be very, very low in this one, probably technically 0 IBUs, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 4 or 5, something like that. But very, very smooth beer on the edges of the palate. So yeah, just a beautiful, beautiful sour beer, this one. Very unique because of the Japanese ume plums, and I'm very glad that I got to try this. For me, definitely worth the price that I paid for this one. So yeah, about €15 for the bottle, which is a wee bit more expensive than what you might pay in Belgium for an equivalent beer, or even if I think about the likes of Jackdaw Brewery in Sweden for some of their stuff. Yeah, that is more than you would pay, but sour beer is a wee bit more expensive, and you pay for quality, and you're going to get that from Shiga Kogen beer and Tamamura Honten. So I don't regret paying a bit more for this beer at all. It was definitely worth it, and a really interesting review, I think. So yeah, needless to say, I've really enjoyed this beer. I hope you guys have enjoyed my take on it as well. And yeah, if you get the chance to try some of these sour beers from Shiga Kogen beer, you're not going to regret it, but you will pay a little bit more for them, fair to say. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. This is everything we need to say about this one. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you get is massively appreciated. If you get the chance to try some Japanese craft beers, Tamamura Honten and their Shiga Kogen beer range is a very good place to start. I recommend starting with the Sonoju, but anything you get from these guys is going to be very nice. And this barrel series, if you're into your sort of old school Belgian sours, you're going to enjoy this one. If you like Rodenbach, you will definitely enjoy some of the sour beers that Shiga Kogen do, and they're quite unique because they use whiskey barrels rather than special fodders and things like that for them. So yeah, lovely Lovely stuff, this one. So once again, thank you for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Shiga Kogen beer and Tamamura Honten. Hopefully we can feature more from this range and the regular range at some point soon. And I do need to try some of the Tamamura Honten sakes. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Bit of a longer one, but a lot of things to reflect on in this beer. Slange, skål, cheers, and kampai.